Here's how you diagnose and repair a bad fuel pump. This is a 1998 Ford Ranger 4.0, and we've checked the spark, and we've got a good spark, and we've checked the relays. We looked in the manual and checked the fuel pump relays, took them out and checked them with the battery, and they're turning on and off. So we know those work. So then we went down in here and checked the inertia safety switch up in there, and you see the little red thing is supposed to be down. That means it's on. And when you get in a crash or something and get hit really hard, that'll go up and it'll shut off. Well, I checked the voltage in here at these wires, and you can look up the pinout online, the first one and the second one, and we're getting electricity through here out to the pump, so we know all our electrical is good. So the next step was to hook up a fuel pressure tester, and you can rent these down at your parts store for a deposit, and you get all your money back when you take it back. And it just hooks up. This one uses an adapter because it's a Ford. It hooks up to the Schrader valve right there on the fuel rail, and we are getting 0 pounds of pressure after multiple tests. So that tells us that there's something wrong with the fuel pump, and it has a 1/4 tank of gas in it. So the next step is to take the bed off and get a look at the fuel pump. Now to do this, there's 3 screws in there, one on the side, one at the bottom, and one in the top right. There's a series of bolts that go down through the bed and attach to the frame. Now those are special Torx bits, so you're gonna need to get some big Torx bits and an impact or a breaker bar or something, and some oil to loosen them up. I'll show you all that here in a second, but before we get to that, you're gonna have to take the tail lights off and disconnect them. Pull your bed liner out, and then I'll show you all the bolts that are here. I think from memory there's 2, 2, 2. And then of course you have your screws on this side for your light. And I'll show you what it looks like with the bed liner out. Okay, now you can see with the bed liner out, there's 2 bolts there, 2 bolts there, and 2 bolts in the back. They're Torx 55 bolts. Now, I already sprayed it down with some PB Blaster from the top, but there's clips on the frame that correspond to these bolts, and you're going to want to get up under there and spray them down good. You do not want to try this with them being dry. You're going to break the bolt, you're going to strip the clip, it's going to be a mess. So make sure you spray them down good. And don't forget to take off your tail lights and those 3 bolts up in there. I'll show you all what it looks like with those out. Okay, now you can see what it looks like with the bed off. You can see the bolt holes I was talking about. They're clips, and on the underside they have bolt nuts on them. There's one there, one there, one there, one there, And then there's two up front. Of course, there's one there. And then right there. And you can see your fuel pump assembly and your filler neck. Now when you're lifting the bed off, make sure you push that filler neck out of the bed as you lift it off, because it might get stuck. But you're going to want to come in here with the hose and clean all the dirt and grit off so you can get it off without getting dirt into your gas tank. And back here, there's a plug right here that you're going to want to disconnect. You don't have to take the tail lights off. You can just disconnect that plug right there. I forgot it was there, so I disconnected the tail lights, but you don't have to. There's just that plug. Make sure you get that so it doesn't get hung up. But yeah, get in here and clean it really good so that you don't get dirt in there. Now to get this off right here, you're gonna have to come in here with a hammer and hit it that way. Hit it like this with a hammer and it'll spin off. And don't hit it too hard. Try to get it on the beefiest spot if you can. Try to hit it down a little bit so that you don't break these fins off. And once you break it loose, you should be able to get it by hand and just spin it off. Now to get these off, you have to have a special, you got to pop these retainers off. And then you have to have, pull this out. And then you have to have a special tool to stick in here. It looks like a ring. I'll show you in a second. But they're get the plastic ones. They're like $8 for a kit of them. And you put it in here and you push it. You put it in here and you push it to take these off. And I'll show you that. Now to get these fuel lines off, here's the tool I was talking about. It's a little plastic thing like this. And you can see I have a couple of them, but you're going to want to pick the right size to use. And once you take these retaining clips off, you pop it over the hose. And you pop it over the hose and you push it down in there. You got to fiddle with it a little bit, but once it's over the hose, you push it up in there and these should pop off. Now you're gonna have to play with it a little bit. Sometimes they're a pain in the butt to get off, but that's how you get them off. I'll show you what the fuel pump assembly looks like when I get these off. Alright, here's the fuel pump assembly. I have it out. And what I found out is the pump works, but the sending units failed. I thought I had a quarter tank of gas sitting on a slope, but really there's no gas in the tank. That's why it wouldn't start. And it just proves you have to check everything every time. Always go through all the electrical and everything until you get back and find the source of the problem. And in my case, the fuel level sender has failed. So I thought I had a quarter tank of gas, but really it was empty. And in order to replace this on this truck, I'm gonna have to replace the whole unit because I can't find just this. They don't sell it separately. And about 6 years ago, I replaced just the fuel pump, because sometimes you can get away with just replacing the fuel pump if you know the fuel pump is bad. And you can see these clamps right here are different than the ones up here. And this is a Bosch fuel pump. And then just a Motorcraft, whatever it is, OEM pump right here, or pump assembly right here. And I know it's bad because I put a multimeter on the lead here, and then to ground, to a suitable ground, to the rod is where I grounded it to. And when it's far away, like when it's got pressure in the opposite direction from this, it doesn't register. But when it's pushed down, it registers because it makes better contact in here. And I'm not going to take it apart and try to clean the contacts and do all that, because if it fails again, you're going to have to take the whole bed off and do this all over again. So it's worth doing it right the first time. Now when you go to look for a new fuel pump assembly, the ones in stores, sometimes they have a lifetime warranty, but you're going to pay double for it. And if you find it online, it can be like half as much, but it only has a 12-month warranty. So that's something to look out for. Find whichever one works best for you, whichever deal. But don't get a cheap Chinese Airtex. Don't ever buy those. If you can find a Bosch, they don't make a whole assembly for this Ranger that I can find. But if you can find Bosch or OEM one, that's your best bet. But the next one, you want to stay away from like Airtex or just like cheap China crap, because it's just going to break again. You're going to have to do this all over again. It makes sense to buy the best you can the first time and do it right the first time, because if this fails and you're in the middle of nowhere, you're stuck. So I'll show y'all what it looks like when I get my new unit in, because I'm going to order it online, and then I'll show you the differences and how to install it. Okay, here's my new fuel pump I got today. It's a Spectra Premium. It's got a lifetime warranty, and you can see here it is in all its glory. It doesn't have the gas tank pressure sensor, but you take that off the old one and put it on here. And there's the model number for a 98 Ranger. Okay, and it comes with a new O-ring for your tank. And then, of course, I got a new gas filter, fuel filter. And this is a Wix filter. I always use Wix filters for everything. They're the best. Don't go buy a Fram filter, the cheap crap. Don't use those. Wix, Purelator. Yeah, just buy a Wix filter. It's worth it. There's the number for a 98 Ranger. 4.0. Click here if you want to see how to change this fuel filter out. But yeah, here's the fuel filter. And I'm going to put that on. Always put a new fuel filter. This says if you don't wash out the tank and put a new fuel filter, it voids your warranty. So make sure you cover your bases when you do this. But yeah, I'll show y'all here in a second what it looks like with the old one out of the tank and me putting this one in. Okay, so here you can see the old one on the left compared to the new one on the right. You can see the strainer is nice and clean. This one's old and dirty. And this was the main part right here. You can tell this is loose. I mean, you can tell this is worn out compared to this one. And then, of course, up here, you have to swap this sensor. You push down on it and spin it. And you might have to get a screwdriver down in here to pry on it. Back in right there where that lip is, pry on it and pop it out and put it over here. But yeah, I'll show y'all what it looks like installed. Now when you install this new sensor in here, you're going to want to put grease around this O-ring because it's going to be a real pain to get in there if you don't. And it only goes in one way because see, this tang right here is larger than this tang. So when you stick it in there, it only goes in one way. And you have to rotate it in those directions in order to get it in and out. And after you install this, you can install the whole pump assembly into the tank. Alright, so you can see I have the fuel pump back in now. And like you removed it, either use a strap wrench or this is an old broken ratchet, just tap on it this direction, clockwise, to get it back on. And get it tight and then a little bit more, but don't go crazy, don't break the ring. And after you have that nice and tight, come back in here and put this line back on here and this line back on here. But before you do that, make sure if your fuel pump assembly came with new connectors, or new retainers rather, make sure you put that in this one, put it in there, and then just pop these back on, pop the retainer, the clip holder thing back on, and put a little bit of dielectric grease in there, and plug these two back up. And then what you're going to want to do is get enough gas to fill your tank up, if there was no gas in it before, to fill your tank up to test it before you put your bed back on. Because if you put the bed back on and this thing don't work, or something's wrong, you're going to have to take it all back apart. So make sure you put enough gas in here to register on your gauge. And then after that, you can just test it, crank it up and make sure it starts and runs good. And then put your bed back on. It's the reverse order of how you took it off. And then I'll show you all this when it's running. But yeah, that's how you do it. Go. Stop. Alright, so now you can see we got our new fuel pump in and we're checking the pressure right here. You don't have to do this, it's not necessary, but we're going to go ahead and do it because we already got it hooked up. But it should be like 40 to 50 psi. Alright, crank it, or don't crank it, just turn it over. Stop. Wow, look at that. 53. Crank it, do it one more time. Oh yeah, look at that. 55 psi. So yeah, just do it like that. And when you do this, make sure you disconnect the coil pack right there so it doesn't get any sparks, so it don't start over. But yeah, we'll let y'all see if it runs here. So yeah, and when you want to drain it, it's got a tube right here, and you press this release valve, and it should, well, there it goes. It drains it out the tube. So yeah, disconnect this and then hook your coil pack up and see if she starts. Alright, are y'all ready? Let's see if she starts. Like a kitten, listen to that. Give it just a little bit of gas. Alright, let off. Listen to that. First try. Alright, so there you go. There's how to replace a fuel pump and a 1998 Ford Ranger. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if this helped y'all out. Later.